As a teacher in a Christian school, I feel it's my responsibility to prepare the students to evaluate life through a Christian perspective, a Christian worldview. So it isn't just ignoring what's going on in the world, but how do we evaluate that? How do I make a judgment on that, if it's good or bad, or evaluate it? It needs to be all by a certain standard. So I'm hopefully teaching them to evaluate everything by God's standard, and putting His Word as what they test everything by, whether they're in church listening to a message or watching a movie or reading a book. It's all by that standard. So hopefully I'm preparing them to evaluate life and to attack life from a Christian perspective.
You know, God calls you to be obedient, to love Him above all, and then also then to love others. So it seems such an easy thing to grasp. Your kids catch it at a very early age, but it's like they have to relearn it when they get to this. I find when they're in the high school years, they have to quickly realize that, okay, that has more substance to it, more than just saying I love my neighbor. Well, what does I love my neighbor look like? How does that look like in society? So
one of the things that I feel very strongly about is that Christian education is not about protecting our children from the world, but it is preparing them for the world. That is, sometimes you get the idea that it's about an escape. It's a way to keep your children out of the big bad secular world, whereas in fact we are preparing them to engage the world. And what I appreciate about our experience with Christian education is they have moved beyond just the academic to actually engaging them in terms of service, in terms of justice, in terms of thinking questions like, what role does my faith have in how I live each and every day? So those would be some things that come to mind when I think of living out your faith.
But that's done in a really safe way. Like I feel like when they're learning those things in the high school, it's not done in a way where they're looking down on other people at all. It's done in a way where they try to understand other people, and where they can articulate their faith in a much better way as well, where it really means something to them. Because if it's just lip service, it's nothing. It's not going to stand the test of time, right? So.
What I appreciate is that for my son, it's second nature for him to see God's design in everything around him. When he's a part of his social friends in the community, on the sports teams, in the Boy Scouts, everything that he's involved in, he can see God in amongst all those activities. And so he is not always comparing one over another. One thing isn't more spiritual or secular, it's all together God, and this is God's world. And so I love that. I love that all his teachers have instilled that in him, and so he walks out into this world knowing that he's a part of God's world, and that's the best thing I could ask for as a parent for my child.